Aizen used his puppet to grow, to interact, to relate, to advance in the soul society. And Dorian also used his picture to also interact, relate, grow, you know, advance in society. Another parallel. Hello and welcome to this video. From the title, you might be wondering how. Don't worry, I myself I'm also wondering how. But I spent a night instead of sleeping. I was watching these episodes of Bleach. Like I'm not done, but I'm just I'm at episode 65, so I would say I'm pretty much just starting Bleach. But there was a major arc I crossed over. That was when Aizen revealed his true, you know, I don't know, motives or his ambitions, all along being in the society. I just completed the picture of Dorian Gray. Before that, I started a reread of it. And so when I was doing my chores the following morning, after spending all night being shocked and whatever, I was doing my chores, I was just like washing plates, and then it just came to me that there is a kind of parallel between Dorian and Aizen. Aizen used his puppet to grow, to interact, to relate, to advance in the soul society. And Dorian also used his picture, at the moment where they exchanged places, where the picture came into him and went into the picture. He was using the picture to also interact, relate, grow, you know, advance in society. I watched that scene where Aizen headed over to the Council of 46, and he met Hinamoru there. And when she saw him, she was shocked because obviously she was the one that discovered his dead body, hanging off of that wall here for all the world to see. So seeing him was a very blatant shock to her and to me myself too, because I was like, what's going on? Like, is this Aizen? Because when anime characters that uses glasses start to have this kind of white light reflection on their legs, that they're up to no good or something evil is about to happen. Standing behind Aizen was this guy Ichimaru, sorry. Ichimaru was standing behind him with this creepy smile on his face, and Hinamori was like, yes, Hinamori was crying and crying, and Aizen was like being pitiful to her. So in that moment I had feelings, like I was very skeptical and I was scared, like, oh my god, is this guy a bad guy, like, or if this guy turns out to do something evil to Hina, then it must be Ichimaru's fault, because Ichimaru looks like a bad guy. He probably reanimated Aizen's corpse to perform evil, so society and whatnot. And then Aizen did it. He killed her while she was holding on to him and crying for all of that bitter tears. Eventually, the whole of society, like the whole captains of the guard, they all got the memo that, oh, Aizen is this, and this is the agenda with Rukia's body or her energy. Aizen stood in front of them and explained what he did, explained his motivation. And he wasn't explaining for them to, like, oh, reason with me and see my point of view. He was just explaining for them why he went through all this effort, because this is what he wanted to attain from them. As in, he doesn't have any sentiments towards the whole society. He doesn't have any, like, as far as I know now, maybe some people that have gone further in the series would have, maybe they'll discover different things, motivations of Aizen. But for now, what he was telling the soul society guys that have known him, like, basically all their life or something, he was like, I don't care for you people, I have never cared for you people, I have my ambitions and this is where I'm going to. You get, he said he's going to sit on the throne of God. We have Shinigami and we have the Hollows, and like, who is now controlling everything? Like, the parallel is more like the Aizen that they have known was just a puppet. The person you thought you knew was the puppet. I am the real thing. You get that kind of situation. Meanwhile, in Dorian's case, Dorian had a portrait done of him that captured his innocence and purity of beauty, and they were discussing it, Dorian, Basil, and Henry. They were about how Dorian is like the epitome of youth. There were a lot of sensations that awakened in Dorian in that whole scene of drawing, of being in Basil's studio and Lord Henry coming to meet them. He had a whole awakening due to the things that Lord Henry told him. And in that awakening, he also wanted to take charge of his life, you get, in that sense, but he felt stunted by the fact of time and mortality, so in that moment he made a wish. He was like, how he wishes that the portrait would hold on to, he will carry all his aging, all his mortality, his humanness, his humanity, while he would be giving this gift of ageless, timeless perfection, this beauty, this how what a portrait enjoys is like timelessness, forever. And like Mona Lisa has never changed from the moment the person painted it till today, that or till generations that will come to go to Paris and see the portrait, that kind of immortality. He wanted to have it for himself, while the portrait like should carry it. He made a wish in that moment to get. So like then the portrait actually began to carry it. We are talking about it from not from a very rational state, we're talking about it from Dorian's own perspective. So that exchange happened, and so the portrait carried his sins in a way. When he the first time his actually Basil was his first victim, but Basil was kind of like in situ, like marinating, I don't know, but Basil was like his first tell of his personality. But me, the first read, I could not see it, you get, till I did a second read again. But the very obvious victim of Dorian's true nature was Sybil Vane. You get, the woman, the actress that he claimed to love. When she died, because she killed herself, is a whole story. She killed herself because of his influences and whatnot, and so he now, when he was thinking about it at home and he was looking at the portrait in front of him, he now noticed a cunning line, or yes, a cunning line appear on the face of the portrait, you get. And when that cunning line appeared, it became so startlingly clear what he had done. But unlike Aizen, that was like, that was the puppet you guys are relating, this is me. Maybe he realized the cruelty showing on his portrait, around his lips, you get. He immediately wanted to hide from it, so he made a rationalization in his brain and was like, oh, the portrait is the wicked one. He rationalized the way Sybil's death. He was like, oh, he's not to blame, he just, he was the one that was even deceived, you get. She was saying she's a good actress, and then when he wanted to show out to his friends, she became a bad actress, and rationalized her death away. So rationalizing her death away is kind of like, pretending you're not a part of this reality. So in a way, he was picture like in that sense, you get. That was the parallel that came to me, when I was just like doing my mundane tasks. I was like, how interesting is it that Aizen, used a puppet to get to this position in Soul Society, and then when the puppet had played its role, he killed off the puppet, and he boldly showed himself, to Soul Society, basically to the whole world. Meanwhile, in Dorian's case, the portrait of Dorian was the real thing. What society was interacting with was just a picture. That's the major parallel between Aizen and Dorian. And in the manner which Dorian selected his prey, in that sense, didn't Aizen also select certain people, and interacted with them or manipulated them in specific ways, so that when his ambition, like when it was ripe or when it was time, those people will come in handy for his for the roles they have to play to make his own goal to be achieved. Like he even said it. He said killing Hinamori was a mercy because he purposely groomed her. He purposely, yes, he purposely manipulated her in such a way that she could not live an independent life outside of him, and him being the puppet. You understand? So now that the puppet is dead, he had to kill her. Basically was his reasoning, that he had to kill her. That was doing her a mercy. You understand? And that is how Dorian too, when is nearly finished with his praise, he leaves them in a very bad shape, in a shape where they cannot return to society to tell the rest of the world, what they have seen, behind the facade of the picture that he presents. You understand? So they are both parallel in that way. Aizen also picked specific people with his puppets, like he manipulated specific people intentionally in different ways, such a way that they would play into his own big picture. They will play into his own goals, you understand, for joining to society at all. If I want to even stretch the conversation longer, it's like his true nature was adoration. Like he wanted adoration at any cost. You get, although on the outside, whenever I converse to people, he always acted like, okay, he's not aware of how beautiful he is. He's not playing into his beauty or his ideal or his perfections and all of that, actually. But when he met his individual interaction with people that he selected, these people, there are a lot of people that adore him when they see him on first sight, but there are some certain individuals he would pick from the flock, and he would focus his evil, I can't call it evil, but his real personality. He would show them his real self, you get. And when he showed them his real self, they would be so destroyed basically by what they see, in Dorian, and then they become disillusioned, and realize that his beauty was just, was not even a fraction of what it was, you get. And so because of their own destruction from interacting with him, he would no longer be appealed by them, because they are not like playthings anymore. They're like spoils playthings. When your toy has spoiled, there's no need to play with it. You just go and get a new toy, you get that kind of thing. So like he saw people as playthings. Even Basil, how already a victim of Dorian's nature. Basil was telling Lord Henry that Dorian's whims are law to everybody but himself. You get, because at that point in that time, Dorian was like, "Oh my God, Basil is such a bore. His affections, his compliments. I've heard them. He's okay. I'm tired of it." And he was telling Lord Henry that Basil's adoration, all of it is just dry now. Like he has heard enough of it. It doesn't mean anything. But what Lord Henry says to him is so new, so fresh. It's awakening something inside of him. You get that kind of stuff. And then when they got to the studio and they saw the finished portrait, you get, when Dorian saw the finished portrait, it was not like angry at Basil, because he was like, "Basil, now see that you have drawn this portrait, now that will be the end of your affections for me." Like, you see that kind of thing, like, oh, he was tired. He didn't appreciate or feel any reciprocation for Basil's adorations and affections. But that didn't mean that he didn't want them to persist. You get, he still wanted the adoration, of a random guy. You get, like he would prefer to have their attention than for them to turn away from him. And so that's why I was trying to reassure him that, oh, I still adore you, Dorian. You always be perfect in my eyes as a person. Like, there's no way you can go away from my mind anymore like that. Where Dorian had self-awareness, and Dorian could feel shame, so much that he killed somebody for making a judgment about his the nature of his soul, or the corruption that is in his soul. That was not to be found anywhere in Aizen. Aizen has no shame. Aizen had no shame. There was nothing to be aware of in Aizen's case, because the human is the puppet, or was the puppet. Aizen is not human, basically. Perhaps maybe the puppet might have felt shame. Not Aizen. Aizen did not feel any shame. That's why he killed it in full glare of everyone else. Meanwhile, Dorian had enough self-awareness to know, okay, this is something I should hide. This is something I should hide. Meanwhile, Aizen was like, it's so logical. It's so logical. So he sounds like what you. I don't think psychopath is the proper word, but he sounds bloodless. Like he has no center of emotion or emotional regulation in his brain, like he was born without emotions, that kind of thing. Something else entirely, like he's an evil creature. So yeah, Aizen had no shame. Aizen had nothing to even practice awareness on. So like awareness is not a thing to Aizen. He was not a thing to Aizen. It was a thing to Dorian, and that's why he hid it. He wished his soul away. He wished his nature away. He put it in another thing, and he hid it and killed the person that looked upon it. But Aizen had nothing like that. Nearing the end, when Basil was on his way to France to kind of show off his works, you get here, he finally agreed to display his portrait, his works. That's Dorian's portrait. Dorian's portrait is one of his most amazing, not that it's a perfect works. So he wanted to see Dorian to ask for the portrait, so he met Dorian, and Dorian took him back to his house. And before they started that talk, Basil was like he wanted to ask Dorian first of all that the things I'm hearing about you, I hope they are not true. I was like, what things are you hearing about? Basil began to say that every time you hang out with somebody, it seems like they reach their end, like they end up in destruction, that you know they cannot recover from, basically. He's like, well, that do you believe them or something? And Basil was like, oh no, he doesn't believe it, that he knows, he with the mind of someone that is like deeply in love, deeply affected by this person. You get, there's no way he would like unbiasedly or impartially say, oh, Dorian, there must be some truth to what I heard. You get that thing? He just wanted to get confirmation from Dorian that no, and Basil, keep believing what you believe about me, okay? But at that point, I think Dorian was in a state of flux. He was very disquieting already on the inside of him. I think it was after, I think that, yes, that was after I had that confrontation with James Vane, Sybil Vane's brother, that had sworn revenge, after his sister died. Like, he swore revenge that he's going to kill the man that caused it, all of that. So it was after that confrontation. So, but I think Dorian was in a state of flux, like a middle ground. He had escaped it by lying that, oh, he was so young, so ideal. There's no way. How old does he look on that? Like, how old do you think I look? I was asking James Vane, how old do you think I look that I would kill your sister? Like, don't you think that I'm just like 18 years old or 19? And then James Vane looked upon his face and was like, oh yeah, 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 actually young, sorry, and all of that. And Dorian was really shaken by that event, so much that I guess he was in a state of flux about his mental, like, I don't know, his brain or something. So when Basil now came again to ask questions again about his upstanding, his moral upstanding, in society and all. Maybe he came to ask him, I guess he wanted to test the waters. He wanted to, I don't know, he wanted to prove something, maybe. So Basil was the one and only witness, to his soul in that sense. After a while, Dorian began to, see the portrait for what it really was, like a reflection of his soul. Like, that is literally what it is, what that's who he really is. And so he used to hide it away. He hid it in the top floor in a secret room that he did not allow his servant to even know existed, and all of that. And so that night when Basil came to confront him, you get, like, the soul society, when they confronted Aizen, blah 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 blah, he did not even try. It was just like, it not even, there was no even like change of his emotional state. It was very nonplussed. It was like as if we were talking about the weather. It was like, okay, so I did the puppet and I did this and I did, and this is my goal and this is my goal. Like, he didn't even care, and he ascended, blah blah blah. But Dorian, when he showed Basil the portrait eventually, he told Basil what to see, what to look for in the portrait. As in, he was like, can you see that line of cruelty around my lips? Can you see all of, like, the way there's the way he explained it to Basil, when he showed him the portrait. And Basil was like, when Basil was looking at it, Basil's thoughts were like, this is the same portrait and there's nothing absolutely wrong with the portrait, but why do I still see, why am I seeing the corruption? I feel like in that moment of looking at the portrait, Basil kind of married the rumors he had been hearing about Dorian in society, and then Dorian's own explanation in a bit, in a way, of the portrait, what he saw in the portrait. He was like, he saw the corruption that Dorian was seeing. You get, I personally think that interaction is kind of flawed. It's not like neutral, like the way Lord Henry would look at the portrait. I think if Lord Henry looked at the portrait, he wouldn't see the corruption Dorian was talking about, because he was completely indifferent to Dorian. Actually, you know, Lord Henry is indifferent to everybody. So, but Basil is in a state of adoration, constant, persisting affection for Dorian. So, if Dorian was like, see this thing about me that is horrible and horrid, he would see it, because he takes, like, I don't know how to explain it, but he would see that, oh, the love of my life is looking at this in this way, so I have to see it this way, that kind of thing. And so he saw it, and then all of a sudden he was like, oh, can't you see the corruption, can't you see that horrid thing leaning over there? And his judgment of it, his just yes his judgment of it made Dorian go into a passionate fit of rage, where he was so ashamed. Like, yes, he was enraged, he was passionately enraged, and I think shame was also in that mix of emotions. Like, and that's what made him kill Basil. Like, he murdered Basil. In the whole thing in that age, that day and age, was like, society was all about presenting like appearances. You couldn't be flawed, in any external thing. Your inside can be rotten, but as long as nobody can see it, it's fine by society. But then Dorian felt like he had a vulnerability, a weakness, and that was the portrait, because he made that wish. He was like, all his humanity should go to the portrait, while the portrait's perfection should be on him. And so he felt like he had been exposed, and he felt Basil was at fault. I'm not explaining away Dorian's madness, you get. I'm just saying probably that was what he felt. So that's why he felt mad. And I feel like it's not just anger at Basil making the portrait that made him kill. It was just the judgment of it. For him to kill Basil for his judgment of his soul, what his soul looked like, that means he had a lot of awareness of how his nature was evil. You get how he had an evil, personality. But like, he that awareness only comes when he's confronted with the picture, or whenever he goes to look upon the portrait. He shuts off that awareness and goes about his life, ruining people, meeting people, and making people fall into absolute adoration for him, all of that kind of lifestyle. So he enjoyed being the center of attention. He enjoyed the perfection that the portrait exchanged with him, that kind of thing. But the self-awareness, he could not put it off for so long, because even the idea of even self-awareness too, even at some point, he was going to meet Henry. He wanted absolute. At some point he was searching for absolution. Aizen, I don't think Aizen is searching for absolution, and I don't think he will search for absolution anytime soon. You get, he killed the puppet. You get, he put it on display. See the thing that people love. See the ideal of kindness and morality, and justice that people love. I've killed it already. Now this is the real me, and the real me has no such feelings. He put it on display. I didn't put the puppet on display, and he killed it for everyone to see. Dorian hid his own, in this case, portrait, kind of like his own puppet too, but let's just say portrait. He hid his own portrait away from everyone else, and hid it in the darkness where nobody, even the staffs that moved, that were present when he moved the portrait from his room to the secret room, he fired them, all of that. Isaac stabbed his puppet. When he stabbed his own portrait, he died. You get, because in that sense, he's not separate. You get, he's not separate from that not separate from the portrait. You understand? When Eisen stabbed his own portrait, puppet or portrait died while he continued to live. So that means he is separate. That means he is completely removed from that moral, upstanding person. He's completely removed. He does not care. He has no connection at all. But Dorian, He died. So that means Dorian and the portrait are one. Oscar Wilde was basically telling us that, or telling the reader that, um nothing outside of you can make you what you really are. You are what you are. You understand? And that even if you can get away with it for a very long time, who you are eventually catches up to you, that kind of stuff. And so when he stabbed the portrait trying to kill his rotten soul, he died. You get a kind of fun revelation. That is not aizen. You get, that means like, yes, aizen has no redemption at this point. Like, I've not watched Bleach, I'm just beginning, but I feel like no way to enter him. You get, in the sense of, okay, using the idea of justice, doing the right thing, moral. No, aizen is an evil to be purged, to be killed. But Dorian, if he had access to maybe health, mental health professionals, he would probably, not that time. That time, if you are anything mental health, they just lock you in an asylum till you die. But like, or till you pretend that nothing's wrong with you again. But had a little bit, of communication with somebody, with a professional, he probably would have come to terms with his nature. You get, he wouldn't have deluded himself into the idea of separating, himself from himself. You get, like, that is so interesting. Is it not? Like, aizen is not the puppet, but Dorian is the portrait. The portrait of Dorian Gray is Dorian Gray. Okay, he, fun part of it is like, when he stabbed the portrait and then he died, when his servants and the policeman even came to check on, that incident, the scene, the portrait was intact. You understand? The portrait was perfect, beautiful as the day that Basil painted it, while he was rotten, I would say. He was unrecognizable. He was destroyed absolutely to pieces, you know and it's only through his rings we're able to recognize that, oh, this is Master Dorian, or Lord Master Dorian Gray. But aizen, after killing him, even when he shows up from Soul Society, was very much alive. He was very strong. He was very much alive in the sense. So it just goes to show that Aizen is not that thing. You understand that he was showing, that puppet was really, separate from who Aizen was. Aizen is what he showed himself to be at the end. When he said he's leaving society and going to ascend to the throne of God, that is who Aizen has always been. You can't separate yourself from who you are in that sense. You get. So, like, I'm saying this in the sense of, maybe later in future episodes, maybe Hinamori might try to make sense of it, in the sense like, oh, although he stabbed her, so I don't know what else can wake her up from that delusion of the puppet. You get. But like, also the puppet has been her master, captain for so long, and they've had so many emotional connections and all of that. So um hmm. It might be hard in the sense that she would know that, okay, that is the real Isaac, but she might also want to appeal, thinking that maybe there's still a part of him. But the truth is, the puppet is dead. She should mourn for the puppet, actually, which she was doing quite alright before the real Isaac showed up. So I think it's just interesting. It's just interesting. The parallels between Aizen and Dorian Gray. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Like, the coincidences that are happening in my life, they're not coincidences, but they're actually very interesting, because it's like, um, when I was reading the picture of Dorian Gray, you know that Dorian Gray was painted on a June afternoon. How, and my book for the month is The Complete Works of Oscar Wilde, and the picture of Dorian Gray was the first book I read. So in the month of June, so like, coincidence? I think not. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.